But want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name's Pat Michaels. I'm the Chief Learning Mechanic here at Great Circle Learning. And we're going to talk today about, basically facilitator guide templates and basically some strategies for success in using those and building them out. We're also going to look at some ways to, concepts behind it, kind of some stuff in action, but then also really the process behind what's going on with those. So to actually put this into really, an actual agenda, we're going to be looking at several different things. We're going to look at, what a template is, some kind of what are the must-haves you have to have in a facilitator guide or templates for facilitator guides. We're talking about structure and how that applies to templates. We're talking about benefits and limitations, and that, really, this one I'd love to hear. That's a section where I really would like to have some interactions with you. So, at that point, don't be shy at that point. And then we're talking about some, I called it template application systems. How do we go about getting things in? And then we'll have a true question and answer section. But at any point, please reach out with any questions while we're talking about it, because we can hit on them specifically at that moment. I always like to say, there's that saying that there's no such thing as dumb questions. If you've got teenagers, we know that's actually not the case. But in terms of templates today, there aren't any, so ask away. All right, with that being all of that being covered, let's jump in. And at the highest level, let's talk about what is a template. Does anyone want to take a moment and kind of answer that? Either in chat or out loud. The simplest, if we were to look at this as the simplest answer, a pre-designed document formatted for a specific purpose. If you were to do some, Googling, your Google foo, whatever you want to call it, and get, that's kind of the generic response to it. And if we look at this, let's look at this in terms of, a template in action. But we're not going to look at it in the world of learning and development. Put on our imagination hats, and let's say we had, people are coming over for a holiday meal, and you're searching for a recipe, right? And you end up with, that food blog post. We're going to use this as an example of templating and a templated document, right? So you find that recipe you want. We can see stuff, right? It's right at the top of the page. It's generally the name of the recipe. There's a really nice looking picture, maybe some stars on how it's being laid out. And then you get into like the whole life story behind this recipe and how it changed their life and all this stuff. And you just want the material. I just want to know, do I have the ingredients on hand and do I have enough time to get this done? Right? So you kind of move through the document, you scroll through it and you get down, here's the ingredients, here are the directions. But this is true, like this is a template. Well, this is a templated web page, a templated document, right? Where we've got our images and where the articles go through. We've got, the ingredients, all the recipes. We've got that story that no one ever wants to read. But we've got all of those pieces. And if you look at but the majority of every single blog post about a recipe follows this template. So once we get in here, we know what to expect. Like, we know we're scrolling through 17 pages worth of text to get to the recipe. But we want to take this idea and actually put it into building out facilitator guides. How do we do this? So if we look back at this item, that saying, a pre-designed document formatted for a specific purpose, in reality, it's not just one template, right? In that blog article, it was, there was the piece for the image, there was the title, there was the story, there was the ingredients, there were the directions. Each one of those, it's its own little piece that's being managed separately. So in reality, it's a pre-designed document component formatted for a specific purpose. right? Each one of those we kind of need to manage separately or be able to manage separately so we can get the look and feel and the effectiveness in one single document. So with that kind of in mind, what are some of the must-haves that we need when we build out a facilitator guide? When we come into the idea of facilitator guides must-haves, I do think we need to take a step back. And if you've attended any of my other sessions or read any of the things, I always talk about what roles do guidebooks, facilitator guides play, what do participant guides play. We need to kind of, in our minds, keep these roles in mind when we're building out our, setting up our templates, right? So in the roles of a facilitator guide, two main roles. One is it's a study guide. The other one, it's a delivery guide, right? So by that study guide, it allows the facilitators and the producers to be prepared to successfully lead this course, right? If we want consistency in training across multiple facilitators, multiple locations, different sessions, what do we have in that guidebook to be sure that everyone's available to do that? In terms of delivery, it's what do we have for our facilitators so that they're ready to be delivery in the moment, to stay on topic, to stay on time. So we're setting up our templates to help us meet both those roles so that we can be successful. When we start looking at this, let's look at some of these templates within the study guide role. And then we're actually going to look at them kind of in a document so we can see it, not just the concept. So in terms of kind of the templates within a facilitator guide, for a study guide about this guide, what are the visual or graphical cues that we're using to help our facilitators in terms of training? What's the program's perspective, high level scope of what's happening in the training? What do we need to have prepared to successfully lead this training? How do we the training at a glance? This is the breakdown of all the modules. What's kind of happening with their timing. So we'll look kind of keeping these in mind, and we'll flip back to this slide in just a moment. But let's actually jump over and look at this in an actual guidebook. So I should have had myself on the right page, but I didn't. I apologize. All right, so in one of the templates we talked about was about this guide. This template, if we think of the study, the facilitator as a study guide, how do we make sure if I'm leading the training, if Kate's leading the training, if Chris is leading the training, we are all successfully prepared to do it? Or your facilitator who normally does it is out sick and someone has to come in and do it. This is a 1 to 2 page, in this case is a 1 to 2 page insurance policy, kind of going over what's in the guidebook, how's it laid out, what they can expect, so that person who's never used it before can can look at it, get an idea, and they know what to expect when they start working in this guidebook. This portion of this template or this piece of the facilitator guide is not for your everyday facilitator, right? They already know how to do it, but it's for the people who've never used it before and don't know what to expect. So, we can take that facilitator guide off the shelf, and whoever's going to run it can successfully do it because they have every piece that they need. Some of the other ones that we could look at here, I talked about the graphic cues, right? Provide a page in your guidebook that shows you all the different icons that we use to drive deliverable actions for our facilitators. And this will make more, if you're not used to kind of our system of building, this will make more sense when we look at the modules and lessons. But we're breaking down actions we want our facilitators to do using a series of icons so they can at a glance get the symbol for the specific icon, like we're going to be saying something, or we're going to be showing the slide, or we're running this activity, but they see that and they know what to do. But in terms of being prepared, they've got the map legend of every single possible icon that they could see in the document and what it means. So in the preparation, they get used to what these icons mean, and so when they can quickly get the information, be right back up in front of the camera, or be right back up in front of the class. Other ones, other templates that are very, very powerful in a facilitator guide is having a place, we call it the program in perspective, but it's capturing the high level items that should be in a guide, that's happening in a guidebook. All right, why are we doing this course, right? The why is very important when we go to try to get buy-in for the facilitator, for the learner, for the organization, for the stakeholder, and kind of capturing that so that, whoever's looking at it can see, as a learner, I can see the organization thinks I should be doing this training because it's going to get me to here. The stakeholders think I should be doing this because this is what they're trying to achieve. So having that written down in a place, but putting it as a template, like every time we build out a guidebook, we put this in here, and I don't have to think about it because it's in one of the templates that gets laid in when I build out my guidebooks. Right? Learning objectives, program timing, right? This is all about how, making sure we capture the information that we need on why and how long we're going to be spending on this class or in this training. How many participants can be in there, right? Just because the Zoom can hold 5,000 people doesn't mean we should do a training with 5,000 people in it, because it's not going to be successful. Right. Other ones, we looked at that program in perspective. If we look at the next one, the last two that we have in here, and that means, program preparation. This is the idea of, here is everything that we would need to successfully lead the course in terms of what's the pre-work we want our learners to do, right? And so in this case, when I built this out, my template came in with this program preparation, right? So in all my guidebooks, I want to know what my pre-work is, what my required materials are, what my room setup is, virtually or physically. What do I need my instructors to do? But that information may be different. So you'll see, like in this case, I've got these fields that you see as highlighted as yellow that's prompting me, or whoever's building the guidebook, with the information that they specifically need. So when they click on that, they know what kind of information we're looking for in pre-work, right? In terms of materials, when we're doing a training, there are specific materials that we need. Now, if it's ones that always are going to be my train, like we only train virtually, so I always need to make sure I have a laptop and I've got, the Zoom account information or those type of things. Put that information already in the template up in required materials, so you don't have to put it in every time, because it happens every time. And then you leave some fields for the information that changes from time to time. So that's the kind of idea here. And the last item we really like to put in is what we call the training at a glance, which is that high-level scope of what's happening in terms of all of our modules, which are truly our terminal objectives in our program. So it's where it would capture timing, the name of each module, and then a short description of how we're getting the learners from where they're currently at to the objective of that module. So that's the idea on looking at your guidebooks or your templates in terms of a study guide, right? So this page, I just want to kind of go through some of the templates that I think are good for you to be using. We're going to look at kind of putting these into play in just a few moments. All right, so we looked at the idea of the study guides. So let's look at it in terms of the delivery guide, right? 2 roles: getting prepared and then actually leading the training or delivering the training. In terms of delivery, this leans more into the structure, which is actually the next big piece we're going into. But in terms of delivery, we're breaking up our material into modules and lessons, right? So heading 1s, heading 2s, or terminal objective, enabling objective, topic, subtopic, whatever terminology you want to use, but think of it as a hierarchy. And then content blocks is our terminology for information that you specifically want to go through. You want our facilitators to be doing. Show this slide, play this audio, make this key point, say this specific item. So it's how we break out the material as we go through. And again, we're going to, the more you can set this up into a templated look, the easier it's going to become for development. The quicker you're able to do it, the more consistent you can do it, saving time, saving money, reducing frustration. That's the idea, what we're trying to achieve all told with templates. So the way this would look in a guidebook, if we flip back over here, right, so, well, actually, I'm going to pop out of this view real quick. If I was to scroll up, here is, on the left-hand side, here's my table of contents, which is really my course structure, right, where we can get into modules and lessons. Right, and if I was to jump down here into a lesson, the content block where I can be saying stuff about specific time, right, like that's going to be taking 12 minutes. Or if I wanted to come through and start putting in information about, we're going to be running an activity, right, and I can now go in and, add the text that I specifically need about activity, all of those, if I had my cursor in the right place, add the information I needed about the activity, and so on. I'm breaking my, within that lesson, which is actually where the teaching's happening, breaking information down into deliverable chunks. So here's, when we're looking at delivery, setting up templates to make the modules and lessons easy to do. Right, so in our case, and actually, won't jump the gun because we're going to talk about it right here. That the idea is get our templates broken out into solving those two roles, right? Study guide, delivery guide. But we also need to look at the document as a whole. And we probably should have, I guess in one way, could have gone about talking about this right at the beginning. But I really thought it was important for us to go in and get some of the baseline information. I will say, if you wanted more information kind of going into each one of those items, this is a QR code, and I will put it when we do the video and send you the email follow-up for the video. I'll give you a link directly to, takes us to a blog article about key components of a facilitator guide that goes more in depth into each one of those areas we talked about. But we now need to look at it really step it back a level, right? I don't want to say 50,000 foot view. Let's say we're going to be at the 15-foot view, right? Take it out of the modules and lessons, out of study guide and delivery guide, and look at the whole guidebook. And this is where structure comes into play, and how do we determine which templates we need and which ones we don't. So within the structure of a facilitator guide and the templates that we want to be looking at that level, table of contents, which we were just looking at a moment ago, but I'll bring it back up just to kind of support this some more. As we go in, right, so my overall, the table of contents is showing me everything in my course. Well, almost everything in the course, right? So introductory materials, what we need to do, really be prepared, breaking these down into these. So in our case, about this guide, program perspective, program preparation, templates that fit within the structure, right? Our modules and our lessons, each course, they're going to be different in terms of, if this was sales training versus, systems training, our module names are going to be different, the information within it, but the structure, the templates that we're using to lay in those structures are the same. If we come in, at the structural level though, so at the whole document, we also need to look at our formatting. How do we lay things out, right? What type of, the formatting, font sizes, color schemes, the layout. We use tables to lay things out because it makes it very easy. to get things on the page. If you need to make it, space them out, tables make it very simple to do. Style guides. This is where you get to determine, meet your style and branding needs in terms of, again, what does my headline text look like? It's this font, this size, this color, this much spacing before and after. Where my body text is this font with this size, this much spacing before and after. And if you get that into, a style guide that's easy to use, where you can quickly apply it, you're not searching through Word and looking for that specific font in the drop-down menu and highlighting text and applying it. Your document or your template is already set up in a way that you can automatically do that just based off of what you have selected. Right? Timing. How do we put timing into the document? Where does it fall? All of these things that play a role in our facilitator guides, we need to define and have a way of getting it into the program. So one of the big things on facilitator or on templates for facilitator guides, it's important about having the templates. It's more about the systems and the processes that we're using to apply those templates, which is a great lead-in, at least in my opinion, to the benefits and the limitations of templates. So if we start off with benefits, I'm going to give you one of the biggest benefits I think comes up, and Kate brought it up right at the beginning, is the idea of consistency, right? Using templates has a great chance of having us build out consistent documents, right? Consistent documents means facilitators know what to expect, where to expect it, when to expect it in a guidebook. And Jeff just put into chat right here, especially if you want the same look and feel throughout the organization. Absolutely. So it's going to be consistency, right? The more consistent we are, makes it easier for facilitation in the class. Easier facilitation in the class tends to lead to a better learning experience. A better learning experience tends to lead to the chance of a greater effectiveness, right? Notice I'm not guaranteeing any of this, right? Because there is no guarantee. One guarantee is coming up on Monday, right? Taxes. But we need to set ourselves up for success and to be prepared for this type of things. So templates will help us get there, but there is never any guarantee because of, there's outside forces beyond our control. So what would be another benefit of templates outside of consistency? I put in some of the other ones I have down. It helps reduce frustration. Hopefully, right? That one's we're going to talk about that and the flip side of this as well. But ideally, a well-made template and a system for applying templates will reduce your frustration, which then helps create, saves time, consistency, all of those type of things. As a developer, this one may not be as important but as an organization or as an individual, if you're doing this, as you do this on your own, like saving money, templates can definitely help you save money because reducing time, being consistent, all of those type of things. If you can customize, if you've got a whole series of templates that you can customize for different clients, maybe you can, for a small amount of effort of changing out some templates, so you have ones that are specific to Kroger versus Publix, right, grocery stores, you can sell them their training at a higher price because it's now branded to them, and there wasn't a lot of extra effort on your part to do it, or there was a limited effort up front, but as you're building more and more things for them, you're getting paid more on each one, so you make more money over time. So those are some of the definite benefits out of this. What about some of the limitations? What do you think some of the limitations or downsides of templates could be. Ones that I have on here, I just talked about it reducing frustration. Templates can 100% create frustration. And that one, for me, it's not necessarily the template that's the issue. I mean, it could be. Maybe it was created poorly. But a lot of times it's the system or the processes that we're using to try to apply that template, right? We're taking that square peg and we're trying to bang it into a round hole because that's what we got. So templates, poorly implemented or poorly created templates can definitively create additional frustration, which then makes you not want to use them, which then it's a rippling effect. And I think it kind of boils down to there's technical terms. There's there's professional templates, right, where people have really spent some time and really got a good system around them. And there's hodgepodge ones, right? Sometimes people are like, oh, I use a template, and it was the previous guidebook that they've now gone and they've just started deleting out all the information and started putting stuff into it, which I've done. We've all, I think, at some point done those, but that's not necessarily a template, right? We're repurposing another document. I think one of the other big issues is, especially when you're looking at the organizational level, how do we share templates between users, right? I built out a whole series of templates that work great, but I now need to get them over to Chris, or I need to get them to Lo. How do I do that? So if I don't have a good manner of doing it, then what ends up happening is I've made edits in the original templates that Lo has, but Lo hasn't updated those, or I haven't gotten to those, and now we don't have organizational consistency because I'm building off one set of templates while she's building off another set. So we've got to kind of have a way to easily share this information between each other. I think the other big limitation on those, I don't know if there's there can be some userability issues. Depending on someone's how comfortable someone is. Maybe they're not comfortable with using Word or Canva or whatever you use, PowerPoint, that there's just it's just too much for them. Or maybe the person building them out just made them so complicated that no one else can try to figure it out because we can't think what's going on in their head. So we've got to have some manner to help overcome those items as well. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to we want to make sure we can have templates that have a low ceiling of management so that they're easy to share, easy to use across multiple locations, and people understand the processes that go behind it. And this is where it comes up. If we've got, if you're doing this on your own, it can be a lot, right? This is why we have a lot of times that you have a single template that people are trying to use, but then when you make changes, a single template can quickly diverge from build 1 to build 2 or build 1 to build 4, where if you break it down into smaller pieces, you don't get wide divergence, right? Maybe that about this guide looks different, and okay, well, I need to go make changes in this one document because I forgot to update my templates. Great. Where if we've got that one piece, and I've made changes and Jeff didn't, we're going to quickly be like this, and now it is, and our learners or our facilitators are having a really hard time because there isn't any consistency in what they're teaching from. The big piece, kind of, I think what everyone kind of got into here for, and I called it a template application system, which sounds really fancy. I didn't have a good term for it, so I just made it up. So how do we go about putting templates into place? And we're going to look at this in terms of Word, because I think a lot of when we build facilitator guides, it's happening in Word. I know some people do them within Slide Master and PowerPoint. I just think that if you do go that route, let's talk separately, because I think that's a very clunky and frustrating way to build. All right, so I'm going to pop back over here to Word itself. So we just have a blank Word document. I think the big one, several ways we can go about it, and we're going to look at, in terms of this application system, or assist to manually do it yourself, and then we're going to look at doing it in LeaderGuide Pro, which is our tool. There's, baseline, if you're building templates in Word, if we come under File, you have at the top of the page, right, you've got a series of kind of predefined templates, or you can end up going under, if you choose New, you can get over here where you've got Office and personal ones that you've created. Right? Find your cover page resume, or your resume cover page, all those type of things. But you can create templates, and for this I created an example which I called my blog post template. So if I was to click on this template, it automatically creates a new Word document with all the information I've set up. So how you actually build, if you were to build one of these, in a Word document, and here, let me just delete all this. But let's just say, I'm just going to put in random text at the moment, as if, we were setting something up, and, if this was something that you always wanted to have come up, you could, when you have a document, if you go under File and choose Save As, what you want to do under Document Type, you would choose the Word template, which is .docx. And then you'd want to put it, ideally you want to save it to the location where all your Word templates are. Which is not the easiest to find, but it's the C drive. Then you go under Users, Your Name, App Data, Roaming, Microsoft, Templates. If you don't want to set up your own location for templates, and I will put that location, not that you have to write this down. I will put it into all the notes from this with the video, so you have it. But I could save this, and now going forward, if I was to go and choose New and go under Personal, I would have I just kept it as this lorem ipsum, and every time I select it, it would build a document with that. So you want to manage this on your own, I would maybe kind of get your structure going under a template here. So when you choose this, you get some of that, the structural pieces that are in there. So we can build this way. You also have the ability, and I'm not sure how many people know this, but under Insert, you can come over to Quick Parts, and you can basically set up specific items to come into a document based off of what you've selected over here. So again, getting ready for this, I basically use that same template I had, but I could select this, and where my cursor was currently located, I could build something out. It would insert it into my document. So I set up a general template with that docx, use that to start my document. And if there's individual pieces in terms of, it could be images, it could be whole pages, it could be multiple pages, and set up it as these quick parts, you're able to do that. Quick parts, the way this works, basically set up something the way you want it on the page. And just for ease, I'm going to show this, let's say I'm going to put in a picture. Right, we'll just use this. All right, so maybe like this, just as an example, let's say this top paragraph, the picture, and the paragraph underneath it was part of something we wanted to have that was going into, we had the ability to easily insert into other documents. I could highlight all that text, go back to Inserts, under Quick Parts, come down and choose Save Selection to Quick Parts Gallery. Give it a title. I mean, you can go into, you can choose different galleries and all these things, but for ease, just give it a name. Click OK. And now, wherever I put my, where I put my cursor, in the future, if I go under Quick Parts, now that item is set up here, and I can grab it and I can insert it. So individually, I can create a template, DOTX, right? And that's fairly easy. I can send that off to somebody else. They just need to save it into their templates folder. This item, the Quick Parts, it's specific to your system. Unless someone would have to go and create it themselves. Unless you actually use one of our other, we have a tool that will help save these out and put them into, where you can share it across different systems. But it is a tool you'd have to get from us. But that, Quick Parts is a nice way for repeatable items you want to use. This brings up a great point. Kind of, this is, I think, more, but it's not about templates. It's not about, it's about managing, your document in terms of editing and revising and all those type of things. Ideally, if you're using facilitator guides, everything that needs to be facilitated in terms of words and concepts is in my facilitator guide. My notes, my notes section in PowerPoint after the fact should be blank. Just use PowerPoint as your visual aids because I've got everything in the guidebook. So, because otherwise you end up in this situation. All right, I've updated it in my guidebook, but now I'm having to bring it back to my PowerPoints. And now if it's in my PowerPoints, your facilitators more than likely are not going to use their facilitator guide. And the other side of it is not every training has slides, right? So we need a system that works without slides. And when we have slides, great, they come in. All right, so, wrong one. The other item we could use, and I don't know how many people do use it, but there is a tool, and I've added to my quick access toolbar. It's called autocorrect. It's a word feature, right? When you type in Tuesday wrong and you do capital T, lowercase e, you misplace Tuesday. Well, here, we'll use that I'll actually show you. Right. If I type in Tuesday wrong, Word automatically changes it for me. That's autocorrect. You have the ability on using Word's autocorrect to create your own. So this is almost like shortcutting certain items that you want to have happen. So headlines you always want to have come in specific ways. Create a short keystroke for it. So, as an example, I could say, let's say I wanted something that said most important points. I like to put in, when I opened up autocorrect, and to get to it, if you don't have it on here, you can always just come up into the search bar and type in autocorrect, which you will then be able to launch it. But what I can do is down in the replace, create a short keystroke. I like to put a symbol in front of it, so I'm not matching it up with an acronym. But so like maybe I'm gonna do $MIP, and I want to have, over on the right hand side, I can type in what I want to come in. Most important point. And why is this? Let me get back in here one more time because it wasn't allowing me to save it. So $MIP. So I add that in. So once I added it, so I typed it in, put, here's my symbol or my short keystroke. Here's what I want to have it come in. I click the add button. Now that it's in there, I could change this. I could make an update to it and click replace or delete it. But now, if I do =MIP and hit space or return, it would help if I spelled stuff correctly. But it will automatically put those in. So if there's specific items that you're doing a whole bunch, get those in there, right? We're trying to consistently do these. So again, easy for you to manage on your own, but you want to use this, across share this with multiple people. They've got to do it individually. It's hard to share this type of information. You almost have to create a cheat sheet where they then have to go in and each person has to do this in their systems, right? So again, managing templating for templates to be very successful on a large scale, you really need a more advanced system to do it. The last item I'll point out before we look at our system, because I think it is, I'm biased, it is the greatest one to do it, but the last system that I think people should take advantage of in Word is it's underneath it's on the developer tab, which you may have to turn on. If you don't see the developer tab on your system, let me share my screen again. If you don't see the developer tab, like I have turned on here, all you need to do is right click on one of the, kind of an open area on on your Word ribbon and choose customize the ribbon, which will give us the Word options dialog box to customize ribbon, and just make sure you put a check mark next to developer. That will put a check mark, click OK, which will give you the developer ribbon. What the developer ribbon will allow us to do, if I choose developer, you've got a whole bunch of different areas, but a lot of it, most of it, I think you'll find right here in the controls section. But, even in the beginning, just use the upper left-hand choice one, rich text content control. Right? I can come in, where my cursor is located, it will give me a text field. Right? And I can now, under home, I could apply a style to that specific field. And now, going forward, if I was to put this in as a quick as a quick part or into a document template, and I did do those in here, that's where I can now type in here, heading 2, and it automatically gives me the text that I was looking for. Or, it's formatted the way I wanted it, and I've got the prompts that I need. So again, it's under developer, and you can get it. We can do rich text, which rich text meaning it will take, it's not just Arial 12 point or whatever the base font and size is for you. You can have styles. You can add, images, and formatting can be applied to it. Plain text, you have no styles, no formatting can be applied to it. But you can stuff for pictures, right? You can do building blocks. These are kind of those items that you chose that we can set up under the quick parts. You can put in checklists. All of these type of things you can use to start developing out the templates that you want to then be saved at the DOTX level or put in as quick parts that you're able to use. But again, on all of these, it's really on a system basis. It's hard, you have to know how to get into these places in Word to save them out, even if it allows you to do so, to then share off with somebody else, and then they have to import them in or save them to different locations. So what questions do you have about kind of what we talked about today? All right. So I showed you, we talked about some concepts. I showed you kind of how you can manually do it. Manually doing it really lives in that limitation side of templates. If we go in terms of building facilitator guides, and you use, let's be honest, if we're using our program LeaderGuide Pro, it is going to make your life so much easier because it is a series of smart templates, but it's also the avenue in the systems to make it easy for you to use it, apply it, and to then share it with other people. Let me just go in. I just need to close this out real quick. All right. Let's say we're going to build a document. To do so, if I was to come up on the LeaderGuide Pro ribbon and I just select in the start section, select new, it's going to basically give me a dialog box prompting me through the process of building out. And just for those on here who currently use LeaderGuide Pro, what you're seeing right now is version 16, which will actually be releasing in the next few weeks. That's got some significant enhancements to make using it even easier. But we'll just call this Sample Guidebook April.
Right now, is this building your template, or is this actually doing one?
This is applying all the templates that are loaded into LeaderGuide Pro already. That it's going to build out a guidebook based off the templates that are already in the program.
Gotcha. Okay.
So give it a name. I could do a course ID. I'm choosing, is it a facilitator guide? Is it a participant guide? So we've already talked about that there's there's a series of templates that you should be using to help build out, in this case, facilitator guides, but really any type of guidebook. LeaderGuide Pro, we call it the collection. And so the way the collection works, we're able to choose the collection down here. So we can have collections collection equals series of templates for short courses versus long courses, because maybe we don't need as much upfront study guide material for that 90-minute training session than we do for the 3-week new hire training. Or we've got a collection for client A versus client B where we've dialed in templates for that specific need. But what we're doing is when we choose the type, is it a facilitator? It's looking at the facilitator templates. If we choose participant, it's looking at the participant templates. If you're choosing e-learning reference, it's looking at the templates that are set up for bringing in stuff from Articulate into a participant resource. We're using columns. This is looking at that layout portion. We're using tables. Now, do we want it to default to 2-column layout or a 3-column layout? So you get to pick, and once the document's created, we can mix and match as we go. Right? So let's say I did a 3-column. Right? Maybe I'm going to do, I can choose my collection. So in this case, we'll use our default collection. So I can choose that. I can go and I can set preferences, like do I always want to have a time block come in? All of those type of things. But when I click OK, what the program now does is it reaches out to the location of where all those templates are stored in the collection, and it starts stitching them together to build out my guidebook based off the choices that I made. And it will quickly generate this out. Prompts you for Word to save. Everything's in your environment. We don't have access to it unless you choose to share it with us. But once it starts building this out, this is one of the new pieces in version 16. Is structure is one of the paramount pieces of success in building training materials. So we're prompting you right away. We're now calling it's the guidebook design template, where we've given you a series of a manual, basically a manual section, or you're doing a single objective that's 60 to 90 minutes. Here's a nice predefined structure for you. Or 90 to 120 minutes. If it's multiple objectives over 3 to 4 or 5 to 6 hours, or you have the ability to create your own and save it under a My Custom Template, where we could select that. I just need to get my corner of this, where it would pull it in, and over here I can come in and change over my name. So like main content, maybe this is, selling widgets, and I could, say, all right, under selling widgets, my first lesson is going to be 15 minutes, and my next lesson is going to be 20 minutes, and my last lesson is 12 minutes, and I can make all the changes I want underneath here, and maybe learning evaluation is conclusion. But I click OK, and it now starts building out that entire structure right into my document. Right, so, and I have kids coming home, so if you hear my dogs going nuts, that's what's happening here. But so it goes through, and now once we've got our structure in place, do I want to bring in images to my document? So do I have a PowerPoint that I want to bring in? Right, and so I'm just going to open one up so we can see it. So if we bring this over, here's my sample PowerPoint, right? It's got like 10 slides with some notes in there. But let me get back. So I'm going to say yes that I want to bring in my images.
Okay.
And it's showing me here's all my PowerPoints that are open, so I can choose it out of the list, or I could, if it wasn't in here, I could use Get PowerPoint and I could pull it in. But I'll click OK because that's the one I want. And what it's now doing is it's capturing all the images of that PowerPoint. Because what will end up happening is I now get prompted, where do I want to bring in my images? When I bring in my images, do I want them to go down into column 1 instead of an icon, right? That visual cue. Do I want it to go into column 2, or do I want it to go into column 3? And then based off where I put my image, so let's say I put my image in column 3, I could put my notes into column 2, or I could put it into a separate row beneath, or if there weren't any notes or I didn't want to bring them over, I could select this. But so let's put my notes into column 2. So it's now grabbing all the information about, the slides and the notes. And now our last dialog box here is showing us the course structure that we set up when we use that guidebook design template. So we've got our module introduction with 2 lessons, and I got selling widgets with 3 lessons and summary. And in the middle section, it's showing me all the slides that were in that slide deck. And I can now say, all right, slide 1 is going to be my first lesson called Welcome. And I could assign it. And maybe slide 2 is going to go up into my second lesson, and I could assign that. And slides 3 through 7 are going to go into this lesson. And the last ones are going to go into my final one. So I could, highlight them out of the list, or if I knew the numbers, I could just type them in over on the right-hand side. But once I was done, I just click on it. And then it would start pulling in all those items directly into my document. We would get a message that says PowerPoint slides are successfully added. It layers in that training at a glance based off my module and lesson information. And your guidebook is ready. It's not done, right? I still need to start manipulating it. But I now, spending a few moments going through this, right? I've got my sample guidebook. That's a template, could be built out, right? there's my table of contents, right? That's got all that information built right into it. Templates for, that are all customizable. And then here's the information as it came in straight out of the box. Courtney, absolutely. I'll reach out to you directly. But now the idea would be I can start taking, if this was the notes were where it was starting from, I could now start putting these into deliverable actions. Like if the piece that I just highlighted is something I want the facilitator to say, I could bring that over and bring that in, and I could start breaking these up into different actions that I want my facilitator to be doing. Or, if you wanted more of if you kind of want to keep all your notes just to the right of this, or sorry, in this case, to the left of the slides, I could use these instructional cues, right? So I could select, this is something I want them to ask, right? And make that a headline. And I could, if this, after this is a key point or a debrief or whatever, I could select that item. If my computer didn't just slow down on me. But I'm able to quickly, insert in either content blocks, which are these blocks here, or these instructional cues, to quickly go through and to apply different items. And obviously that had inserted in twice because things slowed down, because doing this on Zoom just has a way of eating into your computer's processing speed. But you're easily, not only are we giving you templates that you can customize out, let me show you that real quick. I can, on the ribbon, if we go under parts, we can come down, we can select manage collections. And this gives us the ability to get into a specific collection and modify it or export it so it can be shared with somebody else and somebody else can import it into their system. But within the collection, if I was to open up this default collection, things I'm able to modify, I can come through and I can change over what my icons would be inserted in the document or the headlines that it gives you. So you needed a one-on-one training and not an audio. You could customize those out. You want to bring in your own icons for those instructional cues, you could do that. We could get into guidebook parts where you could update your cover page or the acknowledgements page or the getting started. So you can dial in all those templates. And maybe on one document you don't need the program perspective or the program in preparation. You can drop those out so you can get a collection dialed in exactly the way you need it. So, that's using templates. It's very much about, knowing what you need to replicate easily each and every time. But then what's the system we're going into to make life easier to do so at both the individual and at the organizational level. 2 weeks from now, we're talking about revising and editing facilitator guides. Next week, we're going to do a full sneak peek of LeaderGuide Pro 16. But until then, any questions, please reach out to me. All right? Take care, folks.